I went no contact with my Nigerian father after a lifetime of non-contact sexual abuse that started when I was 16. Today I want to talk to you about exactly what happened, the symptoms that I developed as a result of the sexual abuse, and what my life is like now that I am no contact. When I was 16, I did a class assignment on the family computer in my parents' bedroom. And in the morning, I realized that I had left my books by the computer, and so I went downstairs to get them so I could go to school. And when I came downstairs, I think my mom had already left for work, and my dad was in the room by himself, and it was locked, so I knocked and asked him to let me in so I could get my books. And I remember at the time thinking to myself, man, I wonder why the door is locked. Because we pretty much had an open door policy. As the daughter of Nigerian immigrants, I had 3 older sisters, and my parents always had a lot of extra family relatives and even people who weren't related to us kind of crashing at our house, trying to get on their feet so that they could move on when they came to the country. And we really didn't have locks on any of the doors except for my parents' bedroom door. We were basically raised without any boundaries, and my parents had more or less like an open door policy. So I remember this fleeting thought, like, why is the door locked? And before I knew it, my dad had unlocked the door. He let me into the room. The room wasn't that big. They had a water bed that took up most of the room, and he got back in bed. I assumed he was just going back to sleep. And I was over at the corner by the windows with my back to the bed looking for my book around the computer. I was having a hard time finding my books, and at some point in my peripheral vision, because I started looking in other places, I started to sense that there was some movement happening on the bed. And when I turned to look, I saw that my father was masturbating. I was shocked. I was pretty much frozen, and he had the blanket up over him, so thank God I didn't have to see his body, but the blanket was jumping up and down. I could see that his hand was in between his legs, and he was masturbating. Now, he also was looking at me, okay? He was laying back in the bed, and he kind of did this thing where he like slit his eyes, and he was just looking at me. And he started talking to me, actually. And I was so shocked. I don't 100% remember what he was saying. I think he was asking me if I had found the book, and that I don't remember if I was making words happen. And I don't actually remember if I ever found the books. I think I kind of took off and ran out of the room. And mind you, he was talking to me. He never stopped masturbating, and he was just looking at me. And I left. Now, till date, I don't really remember how I got to school. At that time, I was a junior in high school, so I would have had a sister who was a senior. And usually we would go to school together, but to be honest, I don't remember that day. And I know that I didn't tell her on that day. I didn't tell my sisters till I was well into my 20s. So I don't remember how I got to school. I don't remember if I got the books. When I was at school, I looked pretty sick. So my, I think it was my AP English Lit teacher, Miss Moore, saw that I looked really sick. I think it was probably near the end of the day. And she said, why don't you just go to the nurse's office and sleep? You look like you might throw up. And so I went to the nurse's office, and I slept a couple of periods, and then I kind of just went home. Now, when I got home, I did write about it in my journal. I've kept all of my journals, and this is the entry. I'm not going to read it now. But what's interesting when I read it to myself now in my 40s is that I was clearly dissociated. The way that I'm writing about the incident is, how could a father do this to his daughter, as opposed to writing, how could my dad do this to me? And I think I was already in a bit of like pretty emotionally numb at that time. Like, now that I know what I know about my life and have done a lot on my healing journey, I'm pretty clear I was growing up in like a toxic family system. So I think I was a little bit already alienated from my emotions. Like, I have memories of my dad, even before he masturbated in front of me, as a fairly emotionally immature parent. And if you've read that book, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, then you know what I'm talking about. He would have a lot of issues with impulse control. He would get really angry. There were times I would say to him, like, just because you're mad doesn't mean everyone in the house should be mad. And this was me as a kid. So I know I got on my parents' nerves. And I would feel like I was trying to reason with someone who hadn't quite processed through some things. And I already had that experience before he masturbated in front of me. I did not tell any of my sisters. I had an immediate sister a year above me who was a senior when I was a junior. I did not tell her at that time. We had two older sisters. I did not tell them. I did not tell my mom. I didn't tell anybody. I actually ended up calling a radio psychologist, the late Dr. Joy Brown, to ask her what I should do, because I knew something bad had happened. I didn't know what kind of wrong it was. And so I called to ask her about the situation. I described what happened. I asked her what I should do. And she told me that it was my fault. She was like, a locked door is a locked door. And I hung up and I was confused, because I was like, but he unlocked the door. And I'm not sure if she was really listening to me or she was just saying that to get ratings. But I really did internalize that I had done something wrong, because, like as the daughter of Nigerian immigrants, we're taught to respect our elders, and that basically your parents can say and do no wrong. We were also raised Catholic and Christian. I had never been in a room with a guy up until that point, so that was my first experience of that, of anything kind of sexual in a room with a man. And I knew it was wrong. I just didn't know how wrong it was, or like what I was supposed to do about it. In my mind, it must have been something I had done. Like there must be something I can do to like undo it, right? None of which is true, right? And Dr. Joy Brown, may she rest in agony, gave me really bad advice, because basically I just kept it to myself, because I thought there must be something wrong with me, because already, and I'll talk about this maybe in later videos, I was already, because I was kind of a little bit more speaking truth to power in the household, and oftentimes a little bit combative with my dad, because I was like, you've got some emotional issues going on here that I wish you would deal with. I was already sort of being like scapegoated as like the bad child, because I would kind of talk back and express my opinions and views. And I was really internalizing a lot of that, like your bad language that I was getting from both my parents, and who they were triangulating my sisters against me to feel like I was like the odd one out. So when this thing happened, to me, it sort of confirmed what my parents had been telling me. And I conflated it with my spirituality. And I said, well, if I was a good person, good things would happen to me. And if this bad thing happened, it must mean I'm a bad person. So my immediate response to my father's behavior was essentially silence. Like I didn't say anything about it. I would dress myself in really baggy clothing, because I noticed after he masturbated in front of me, that he would be looking at my breasts and my ass, because obviously as he was masturbating he was looking at me. But it really did change my behavior a lot. Like if, let's say he was coming home from work and I was sitting in the living room with a tank top and I heard his car outside, I would immediately run upstairs and hide and hold my breath and hope he didn't hear that I was there. If he heard that I was there and asked me to come downstairs, I would put myself in like as many baggy clothes as possible, because I never really wanted to be alone with him after that. I never really felt safe at home. So it actually wasn't until I was in my mid-20s that I had a therapist who called it sexual abuse. It took me that long to realize that that's what that was. In a sense, it had been normalized so much my whole life that I did not know that this was a form of abuse. But I do realize that had I not gotten cancer, I wouldn't be making this video and I'd still be in touch with him, because I hadn't really understood the gravity and the long-term impact of this kind of stress and abuse. So I would like to talk about some of the other symptoms. Now, obviously, stress can lead to inflammation, and chronic inflammation can lead to cancer. It's hard to really know, quote unquote, why I got breast cancer. I don't have any genetic markers for it, although my mother, she passed of non-small cell lung cancer as a non-smoker. There are other chronic health symptoms that I've had my whole life directly connected to childhood sexual abuse. And ultimately, this is what helped me to understand that what I lived through actually was sexual abuse. Because I would hear these stories of CSA survivors, and I would be able to like understand and see their experience from jump. And I was like, why do I feel like I am someone who experienced this, although I never felt someone physically touch my body? That's because chronic non-contact sexual abuse is also sexual abuse, and there's various different types of it. But in the next part, I will talk about some of the symptoms that I physically, psychologically experienced as a result of my father.